Hey, what's up guys? Chris here. So I decided to create a new video discussing the topic of slavery in response to the people who continue to assert that the Bible does in fact support slavery. Due to the fact that there is so much to discuss, I have typed out everything I have to say and will be reading directly from it. Immediately, the Bible condemns slavery in which a person is kidnapped and either held captive or sold. It goes as far as to give the death penalty for such an act. Exodus chapter 21 verse 16 clearly states that anyone who kidnaps someone is to be put to death, whether the victim has been sold or is still in the kidnapper's possession. As well, in the New Testament, slave traders are listed among those who are ungodly and sinful and are in the same category as murderers, adulterers and perverts, and liars and perjurers. 1 Timothy chapter 1 verses 8 through 10. In addition, the Bible also condemns race-based slavery in that it teaches that all men and women are created by God and made in His image, Genesis chapter 1 verse 27. We are all descended from Adam and Eve, therefore we are all one race, the human race. Being made in God's image, all humans have equal inherited value. In order to assert that the Bible supports slavery, especially the kind that occurred in the United States of America, one must entirely ignore what is clearly written in the Old and New Testaments. The Bible only permitted a single form of slavery, economics-based slavery. This permitted form of slavery logically had to have been willful, since forced slavery was condemned and given the death penalty in Exodus. There were multiple rules and regulations placed down in relation to the treatment of these slaves. There are some who view these in a very illogical way. There are those who see these rules and regulations as having encouraged masters to treat their slaves in a cruel way. In reality, the rules and regulations restricted how masters could treat their slaves. Such rules could be compared to rules protecting children against abuse. Such rules do not encourage abusing one's child but prohibits it. In the same way, these rules do not encourage abusing one's servant, but rather prohibited it. In the countries around Israel, a slave did not have protection such as this. It was important for there to be such, otherwise foreigners would have been encouraged to move into Israel with their atrocious ways of treating people. In addition to this fact, all slaves, even if they were not living in Israel, were protected in that they ran away from their master to somewhere in Israel for any reason. They were not to be returned, but rather allowed to stay and be cared for. Deuteronomy chapter 23 verses 15 and 16 clearly state, "If a slave has taken refuge with you, do not hand them over to their master. Let them live among you wherever they like and in whatever town they choose. Do not oppress them." Again, this went for all slaves, male or female, Hebrew or foreign. This enabled Israel to be a safe haven for all the slaves of the surrounding countries in which cruel treatment was allowed. As well, it logically did well in ensuring that the Israelite masters did not abuse their slaves, as the slaves had the right to leave at will for any reason. Selling oneself to pay off a debt or get out of financial hardship is one of the two types of slavery within the economics-based slavery described in the Bible. First, it is important to note that it was not required of a person to pay off a debt in that specific way. It was only if the person in debt chose to pay it off in that way. If the person who sold themselves were Hebrew, whether male or female, then they were to only work a maximum of 6 years and then be set free in the seventh. Deuteronomy chapter 15 verse 12 states, "If any of your people, Hebrew men or women, sell themselves to you and serve you 6 years, in the seventh year you must let them go free." It is slightly different for foreigners, however. They would not have a maximum amount of years to work. It would go until they could pay off their debt or they felt they had gotten out of their financial hardship. When a Hebrew man or woman was set free, they were also given a bountiful supply of certain items. Deuteronomy chapter 15 verses 13 through 15 state, "And when you release them, do not send them away empty-handed. So supply them liberally from your flock, your threshing floor, and your winepress. Give to them as the Lord your God has blessed you. Remember that you were slaves in Egypt, and the Lord your God redeemed you. That is why I give you this command today." The next part of this form of slavery dealt with how to handle if two people were single or married, or became married. Exodus chapter 21 verse 3 states, "If he, a Hebrew servant, comes alone, he is to go free alone. But if he has a wife when he comes, she is to go with him." This makes logical sense. If a Hebrew servant comes alone, he is set free alone. If he is married when he comes, his wife is set free with him. However, there is quite a bit of discussion regarding the next verse, verse 4, which states, "If his master gives him a wife and she bears him sons or daughters, The woman and her children shall belong to her master, and only the man shall go free. This still makes logical sense. Note, it does not say that the woman and children would have been there for the rest of their lives. The woman would still have been there until her debt was paid off, or until she worked the maximum amount of 6 years, if she was Hebrew. Otherwise, she could have been deceitful by creating a massive debt and then selling herself into slavery to have her debts covered, only to marry someone with a short time left on his term and then go free with him. As well, it would have been most beneficial for the children to stay with the wife and master rather than with the husband, as all of their needs were abundantly supplied for by the master. This wouldn't necessarily be so with the husband, considering he would have only just paid off his debt and got out of financial hardship. However, the man did have the option given in verses 5 and 6 to stay with his master, wife, and children rather than be separated for however long it would be until the wife was set free if he chose to do so. Selling one's daughter to her future husband to be cared for in advance before they became married is the second of the two types of slavery within the economics-based slavery described in the Bible. Exodus chapter 21 verse 7 states, "If a man sells his daughter as a servant, she is not to go free as male servants do." There is a difference here due to the difference of the reasoning. A male servant would only be performing labor to pay off a debt or get out of financial hardship. A female servant could also do such, but that is not what is being talked about in this instance. Rather, it was for marriage. Marriage is a lifelong covenant between one man and one woman. Therefore, the sanctity of marriage is honored in this. That is, if it was approved for the female to leave after 6 years, then marriage would no longer be held as a lifelong covenant. Instead, it would give men free rein to marry a woman for 6 years and then trade her in for another woman. This is not approved of in the Bible. Therefore, that is why verse 7 makes the difference clear. The verses that follow, verses 8 through 11, give protections and rights for these female servants. They state, if she does not please a master who selected her for himself, he must let her be redeemed. He has no right to sell her to foreigners because he has broken faith with her. If he selects her for his son, he must grant her the rights of a daughter. If he marries another woman, he must not deprive the first one of her food, clothing, and marital rights. If he does not provide her with these three things, she is to go free without any payment of money. There is also the protection against atrocities such as rape. Rape is condemned in Deuteronomy chapter 22, verses 25 through 27. The main reason for a man to sell his daughter to later be married would be to provide her with a better future, as she would have moved into a higher socio-economic class. This was not the ideal circumstance and shouldn't have been sought out. It would have only been a last resort to ensure the daughter would have a better life in the end, since the father was too poor to provide such himself. And of course, there were multiple rules and regulations meant to protect the women being placed into marriage by their fathers. The ideal for marriage is that it is not affected by social status or economics. However, this was sadly not the case in Israel at that time. Marriage was stated from the very beginning of creation to begin by a man leaving his father and mother and joining his wife. Genesis chapter 2 verse 24 states, "Therefore a man shall leave his father and mother and hold fast to his wife, and they shall become one flesh." Social status and economics had absolutely nothing to do with marriage in the beginning. However, cultures formed and its connection became common. There were actually multiple laws set in place to try to avoid the permissible but economics-based form of slavery in the first place. Most of these laws are found in Deuteronomy chapter 24. Verse 6 states that a piece of equipment used in the survival of a family was not allowed to be taken in pledge for a loan. Verses 12 and 17 state that if a poor man gave his cloak in pledge, it had to be returned that night so he wouldn't be cold. A widow's cloak was not to be taken in pledge at all. Verses 14 and 15 state a poor man had to receive his wages daily. Finally, verses 19 through 21 state that when harvesting wheat, olives, or grapes, some had to be left over for the poor to take for themselves. All of these laws would have made it a rare occurrence for an Israelite to need to sell themselves to pay off a debt or get out of financial hardship, or provide their daughter with a better future socially and financially by selling her to a future husband. If in the case that such had to occur, however, as stated earlier, there were rules and regulations that provided the servants with equal rights and protections. First, Deuteronomy chapter 5, verses 13 and 14 states that servants were to rest on the Sabbath day just as any other person living in Israel did. Second, Deuteronomy chapter 16, verses 10 through 12 state that servants were to be included in the celebration of the Festival of Weeks along with everyone else. Exodus chapter 21, verses 26 and 27 make clear that if a servant is permanently injured, they must be set free immediately. That would have also effectively cleared any debts they still owed. It would have been a major reason for their master not to injure the servant at all, although hopefully their love for their neighbor, the servant, would have been existent to keep them from doing such. Again, if a servant felt abused or felt like leaving the master for any reason at all, they had the power to do so in light of Deuteronomy chapter 23, verses 15 and 16. Finally, killing a servant obviously deserved punishment, as Exodus chapter 21, verse 20 states. In addition to these rules and regulations that provided the servants with equal rights and protections, it was made clear that a servant was equal in value to a free man, even the servant's master. Of course, this is already known with the fact that everyone is created in the image of God and has inherent value. However, it is restated in the book of Job, as well as making it clear that it is wrong to deny justice to a servant. Job chapter 31, verses 13 through 15 state, "If I have denied justice to any of my servants, whether male or female, when they had a grievance against me, what will I do when God confronts me? What will I answer when called to account? Did not he who made me in the womb make them? Did not the same one who formed us both within our mothers?" Servants were viewed as equal in value and deserving the same rights as free people. They simply were in a worse economic situation and chose to fix it in that way. As Christians, we should be on the forefront of ending all slavery. This is due to the fact that we, as followers of Jesus Christ, have truly been set free from the slavery of sin, as well as is stated in the Lord's Prayer that Jesus spoke in Matthew chapter 6, verses 9 through 13. We are to let God's will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Slavery neither exists in heaven or is part of God's will. Therefore, to further God's will on earth as it is in heaven, we should be working to abolish slavery. Our love for God and love for others promotes the abolition of slavery. As well, even the permissible economics-based form of slavery should be abolished, as it is stated in Romans chapter 13, verse 8, that no debt remain outstanding except the continuing debt to love one another. For whoever loves others has fulfilled the law. Historically, Christians were in fact a large portion of those who worked to abolish slavery in the United States of America and other countries in the world. One Christian greatly known for working to abolish slavery was a former U.S. President, Abraham Lincoln. There is also a devout Christian man, William Wilberforce, who led abolitionist movements in England. Anabaptists, an early name for Baptists, and British Quakers under the leadership of John Wesley were among the first groups of that era to protest slavery. Many other famous devout Christian abolitionists could be listed. Of course, there were the millions of devout Christians who were not famous, but still fought to abolish slavery just as much as the well-known ones did. It is very saddening to say there were in fact some people who wore the name of Christian while still supporting the slavery that plagued the United States of America and other countries. This can be compared to a present-day battle against abortion. There are millions of Christian abolitionists fighting to end abortion. However, there are those who claim to be Christian who see nothing wrong with it and completely support it. Many assert that the baby is not human or less than human and is not a living creature inside the mother. The same was said for slaves, that they weren't human or were less than human, they were merely property. A Christian can neither accept slavery or abortion. This video isn't meant to get into the specific details of what is wrong with abortion and why a person cannot both be a Christian and support it, but it is to illustrate how a person can claim to be Christian but not bear the fruit of a Christian. Being Christian is not merely a name tag to be worn. It is a lifestyle, a relationship with Jesus Christ, with the Holy Spirit living in us. We should therefore reflect the love of God and the fruit of the Holy Spirit. You must be born again, as Jesus Christ stated. That is, not physical birth, but spiritual birth by the Holy Spirit. Slavery still exists in the world today, and Christians are still working to completely end it. It is estimated that there are still 27 million slaves in the world. It is absolutely terrible that even one person is in the bondage of slavery, let alone 27 million. I encourage and urge everyone here, Christian or not, to work to end the atrocity of slavery. In the description of this video, along with links discussing its topic, I have left 2 links for organizations working to abolish slavery. I highly encourage you to check them out. They are Faith Alliance Against Slavery and Trafficking and the End It Movement. I also encourage you to read the Bible for yourself to see that it simply does not support slavery. In the description, I have also left 2 links for organizations working to abolish abortion. As well, I have linked 3 of my previous videos discussing the topics of what is a true Christian, not all who claim to be Christian are Christian, and abortion. I hope this video has opened your eyes and provided you with more information on this topic. I hope it is absolutely clear now that the Bible simply does not support slavery. Have an awesome day, and God bless you.